Hey there, what's up? Hello, dear friends and family. My name is Kelsey, and I am a person living in recovery long term from drugs and alcohol addiction. Today, I just wanted to give you 15 things in no particular order that help me stay sober and have helped me grow along the way. If you're new here, hello, welcome to Hello Dear. Hello Dear is where I share all things about my life in recovery from drugs and alcohol, recovery from trauma. We're always recovering from something, and recovery is for everyone. So if you're new here, please give this a like, a share, subscribe, do all the things with the bells and the whistles, and I would greatly appreciate that. If all you can do is comment something, fantastic. I appreciate any interaction with this page. My number one most important thing for long-term sobriety, and I have said this since I first got sober. People will be like, how do you stay sober? How do you stay sober? You know, like everybody, like when you come into recovery, you're scrambling and you have all these emotions and everything's new and it feels crazy. But my number one most important thing to me is honesty. Not just like, I'm going to tell you the truth, like, hey, how are you doing? I'm fine. Because you're fine in the moment and you're fine on the surface, but fine is feelings I'm not expressing. We don't say fine. If you are talking to someone, like, we don't have to bear all to everyone, but brutal honesty is crucial to staying sober long term. Being willing to tell on yourself to a confidant or a source of some sort that you can confidently trust that person to handle that information is absolutely crucial. So we have to be brutally honest and willing to tell on ourselves when we're not feeling great. Just recently, I am going through kind of a funky muck. I live in northern Indiana and it is gray. Most of the winter, it is gray. We have seen quite a bit of sunshine in comparison to years prior this winter. However, it is still cold. It is still windy. Everybody I've talked to has had some sort of illness and you get cooped up your inside. So by mid-February here, everybody's feeling a little bit crazy. So being willing to tell on yourself, have a trusted person that you can call and say, look, like, I've got a little bit of seasonal depression. I'm feeling kind of funky. I can't get out of my own head. Can you please help me stop this spiral? It is crucial to be brutally honest. Number two, I did number them, but I didn't put them in any particular order of importance. These are 15 things. I have been sober for 15 years. So I thought, I like numbers. I like to do fun stuff like that. So what are 15 things in 15 years that have kept me sober since the age of 20 years old? I'm 35 years old. I got sober at 20. I was arrested for manufacturing methamphetamine. When I was 20, I had no hope for the future. No, I never thought I would live to see even 21, but 35, like, I've got white hairs coming. Yeah, 35, I never thought was an option for me. I am not a professional. I have a lot of books that people are always giving me books and with different ideas. And I love recovery. I love people in recovery. I love being sober. I love the life that I have today. And I thought, if I could just throw together a list, there are so many lists out there. There are so many tips. This is just my passion. And I just really care about people who want to get sober. And I thought, if I could get sober at 20 years old, I've never drank a legal drink of alcohol. I believe sobriety is complete abstinence from all substances. I know sobriety looks different for different people. I am also married to a person who is in recovery, and his recovery looks a lot different than mine. And I have learned to grow to respect that, because some people only get sober from their drug of choice. Do I consider that complete sobriety? No. But is it recovery? Well, they're no longer smoking meth and they're living a normal life. So I'd say that person is in recovery. Everybody has a seemingly different opinion. My old school AA friends are like, if you take one sip of alcohol, like, you hand in your chip. So I've come a long way in my thought process on that. I understand the seriousness of why they say one is too many and 1,000 is never enough. And I respect that. I respect the old school AA foundation that I was brought up on. I literally grew up in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. I was 20 years old. I started using when I was 13. So my emotional maturity level was definitely lacking for a 20-year-old. I was acting like an idiot. They definitely straightened me out. So those old school, like pound the table, still smoking in the basements of recovery homes, AA people, absolutely love them. A lot of them have passed and gone on now, but I will forever be grateful for the firm foundation that was provided to me in those rooms. Number 2, community. Community is absolutely crucial to long sobriety. It is so important to build a community of like-minded people and otherwise. What I mean by that is when I first got sober, they say you should not isolate and not hiding out. And they say this in the big books of Alcoholics Anonymous. If you have never read the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, it is a hard read, especially for a person like me who did not graduate high school. And this book was written in the 30s. The lingo was very much from the 30s. Trying to understand and decipher what was being said in that book coming out of 7 years of continued drug abuse was hard. You don't necessarily have to have a big community. You don't need a quantity of people, but you definitely need quality people in your inner circle. People who are also in recovery. They say, stick with the winners, stick with the winners. And I didn't always like that, but you're not necessarily looking for someone who's getting it all right, who is just, fabulous in all areas. You are looking for someone who has what you want. So if you want long-term sobriety, go for that person. And that person is there to guide you along the way. So you're looking for community in recovery meetings or a church group, wherever you are looking for people who understand what you've been through. Otherwise, so you need people who are going to help you grow in other areas. They say it takes a village. What they don't tell you is that the village isn't just there. You have to build it. And if you were like me, I was the village idiot. I was pretty wild when I came in, and some of the old timer AA guys were like, whoa, we remember when you got here. So to see me sober long term was like kind of a shocker. You need to build community. We need brutal honesty and we need community. Okay, number 3, have a solid foundation. You're going to build this solid foundation. Not everybody's got family to fall back on, because some of us are coming from family that is also still using. You cannot fall back on a group of addicts. Your old friends, your old stomping grounds, your family members, if they are still using, they are not a reliable foundation. You cannot build off of your old stomping grounds. If you do have family members that you can use as part of your safety net, go for it. But make sure you have made all your amends. Make sure you have hashed it out, talked it out, and this is going to take time to repair relationship with people that we have spent years abusing, lying to, stealing from, taking advantage of. They're going to need some time. It's going to take some time to recover those relationships. They might be there to fall back on, but also give them time and respect to regain their trust. Highly recommend that family members also attend recovery meetings such as Al-Anon, support groups at church. There are many, many groups for the family members of the recovering addict. There's also counseling. These are safe places where, we're not the only ones recovering. And just because we can feel the change within us doesn't mean that the rest of the world is going to change. We've changed, the world has not. So we need to keep that in mind. You're going to build up from your firm foundation. It's going to include going to meetings, going to church, having a family, having a support system, having friends, having that community of like-minded people and otherwise. And building off of our firm foundation, we are going to want to remain brutally honest. Number 4, communication. Being open about when you are struggling. So this kind of goes off of brutal honesty, but communication is so important. And this can be excruciatingly painful for some of us. I just was in a group with a lady today who was talking about she spent an entire year in her room by herself. The group atmosphere was just really hard for her. It is hard, but it is absolutely necessary to be a good communicator. And this is going to be hard because we are used to lying. We are used to cheating. We are used to manipulating. So it is so important. There are classes about communication. There are classes about thinking and how your brain works. There are millions of books and podcasts and YouTube channels and different places, counseling that can help you understand the way you think. Addiction is a thinking disease, and when you don't think right, you're not going to be able to communicate properly. It's important to be open about when we are struggling and being willing to, once again, tell on ourselves when we're not doing so great. On the flip side of that, I also think it's important in our communication to celebrate the good, because we have dogged ourselves for so long that we might not necessarily be good at communicating when things are going well. So just having open, honest communication is so crucially important to staying sober long term. Number 5, get a counselor. I have had many counselors over the years, and I kind of roll my eyes when people say, hey, maybe you should get back to counseling. But I can tell you, to be able to work through things, like, you cannot think yourself sane with the same mind that thought yourself insane. You can't think yourself sober with the same insane mind you had. Counselors are going to be able to help you think about things in a different way, because once again, addiction is a thinking disease, and it is so important to have someone kind of walk you through the process of staying sober. And there are so many more things that need to be addressed than just the physical addiction. There is the trauma. Most people didn't just wake up one day and say, I think I'm going to go hit a boat. I think I'm gonna roll my Jerry today. Like, you don't wake up and just start cooking meth. My story, for instance, was just started drinking with some friends when I was a young teenager, and it just progressed. Weed, pills, on and on and on. Why did I take that first drink, and what was I hiding from? Hang out and feel cool with the friends because I didn't feel adequate and I didn't think I measured up and all those things? Or was there trauma there? A lot of people who use hard drugs have experienced some major life trauma, and your trauma may look entirely different from someone else's. My trauma, a lot of it stemmed from the abandonment of my mother. And then after she abandoned me, she was murdered. And I had a lot to unpack after I got sober. And you don't think something is trauma until you're sitting in front of a counselor. I was just telling my mentor about this morning. I vividly remember when I was sitting in counseling explaining my childhood, and she's like, that's not normal. And I was like, what do you mean? What is normal then? And I didn't realize until I started going to church and seeing what normal families. I really don't think any families are actually normal, but there are some that function well together. So everybody's got a little bit of dysfunction, or that one weird uncle, some dysfunction, because we are humans, we are broken, and we're never going to be perfect. There was only one perfect man that ever walked this earth, and they crucified him. So counselors will help you recognize what is normal behavior, what is not normal behavior, and help you to process the trauma of your childhood or betrayal or whatever has led you to this addiction. Number 6, I believe that it is crucially important to have a home church. I know there are many people who have been hurt by the church. I know there are many people who have church trauma. That is not my case. I was not raised in the church. I actually feel guilty sometimes because of the contrast of the difference between my husband and I's relationship with God, because my husband was damaged by the church. He grew up in a strictly religious home. He had shame, he had condemnation, he had guilt, he had remorse, he had regret, he had all these things that were compiled on him that he picked up from a religious culture. I used to like to say early in recovery, I would say, I am a spiritual fruit, not a religious nut. My spirit was enlightened and just blossomed after getting sober. I go to a non-denominational church. I know that can be kind of loosey-goosey, or like, I don't have much knowledge of any other denomination. I believe Jesus Christ died on the cross. I believe that he rose again. I have accepted him as my Lord and Savior. Without getting into all the church politics and the insanity of what is around or what people have done to the church, I can tell you that it is so important to have a home church that you go to, even if they don't have a membership program. Ours does not. Other churches do. Somewhere where people know you, somewhere where people say, hey, how are you doing? It is so crucially important to fellowship and grow in a small group. And just get to know people. You need to build that community. You need to put bricks into your foundation. You need that solid foundation to fall back on. Home church is a fantastic way to do that. I can tell you that starting my week off after going to church on Sunday, it helps you put the right foot forward. I know it's not for everyone. If you've been hurt by the church, I'm sorry. It sucks. I live with someone who has church hurt, and that is a hard onion to peel back. So number 7 on my list is podcasts. It's not something that is like on the top of the list, but podcasts are something that help me to get out of my own head. I spend a lot of time doing things without the communication of fellow adults. I have oftentimes found myself, when you think your own thoughts all day long, they can make you kind of crazy. So podcasts are a great way to get out of your head. I absolutely love my number one, very most favorite podcast is Daily Hope from Pastor Rick Warren. He speaks to my core. I used to love listening to Christine Kane. There are many, many great podcasts out there. I like to switch it up, but if I'm getting kind of funky and I can feel myself falling by the wayside, I can tell you that throwing on a podcast, like while I'm getting in the shower or washing the dishes or whatever it is, the task that I'm trying to complete, and I want to get out of my own head, throwing on a podcast is fantastic because you can listen to a different sermon at any point in time. Number 8, I put down books or audiobooks. I think it's very, very important to read recovery-based material. Like I said, the AA Big Book was a little bit challenging for me starting out, but the NA book, not so much. So that was much more relatable for me. I was diagnosed with ADD after getting sober, which was kind of like, looking back, I'm like, maybe that's a loose diagnosis, because how can you diagnose someone with attention deficit when their brain is like just coming off of methamphetamines? But I can tell you that a lot of the symptoms make sense. I am not one of those like TikTok people that say, I think I have autism. Like, diagnosing yourself is not cool. So you need to see a licensed professional, a doctor with a degree who knows what they're doing. There are tests to take, and don't just like slap diagnoses on yourself. That's not cool. I do have a lot of those quirks and qualities. It's totally fine. It's totally manageable. Not everything has to have a medication. You can manage and get through life. If you do have medical concerns, see a medical doctor. Don't try to Dr. Google it. Don't try to self-diagnose. Don't try to plaster it all over the internet to make you feel cool. I remember the days when we just all wanted to be like each other and blend in, and now we all want to be like each other and stand out. Like, the world is definitely changing, or has changed a lot. Books audiobooks. I have a really, really hard time reading a book because of my diagnosis. I find it easier. This is how I have to read a book. I have to listen to the book on audiobook while holding the physical book. And then I have a highlighter or a pen to underline what stands out to me in that book so I can flash back really fast to see what I saw to try to retain it. That's how my brain works. Everybody's different. I have friends that can just sit down and read like crazy. My mother was an avid reader. I have a child who reads more books than the library can possibly help her check out in a week. So everybody's different. I don't know if it is like this is the way my brain was born, or I have Swiss cheese brain from the drugs. Who knows? That's how I have to read a book. But listening to an audiobook, reading books, reading the recovery material have helped me pour into that foundation. Number 9 is classes and group activities. There are so many different options in my community. I live in a smaller town. I'm assuming that in bigger cities, there might even be more options for people who are in recovery. Just in our small town, I can think of 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 groups right off the top of my head at mental health facilities, rehab facilities, homeless shelters, churches that they teach classes on rewriting your life, changing your thinking. They do book studies, all kinds of classes and group activities. And once again, we are going back to groups because we are not meant to do this alone. Humans were not made to do this alone. Whether you believe in God or not, isolation is dangerous. My father was not a drug addict. I never saw my dad drink a wine cooler, for that matter. He didn't drink, he didn't smoke. He was a hardworking man, but he was isolated. And he lived in isolation for, over 25 years before he died a miserable, lonely death. And he was morbidly obese by the time he died because he was trying to comfort himself and fill that God-sized hole. And I so wish I could have seen him grow in a support group or a church community, or just have friends for that matter. It is so important to take part in group activities. Number 10. For me personally, I was, like I said, I was kind of reborn into AA. I think that AA, NA, CMA, Celebrate Recovery, all these programs are wonderful, and they use the 12 steps. They follow the 12 steps, and those were founded in Alcoholics Anonymous by Bill Wilson. And if you've never read through them, you can Google. I could list them here in the description. But it is so important to do step work. You can stay sober long term without doing the steps, but also fully, wholeheartedly believe in the process of working the 12 steps with a sponsor, someone solid who's been sober longer than a year, who can sit down with you and walk you through those steps. I think it's very important, and the sooner you do it and get a sponsor, the better chance you have at staying sober long term. Number 11, I was just talking about a sponsor. If you're not in 12-step recovery, if you're not living in rehab, if you're not involved in a local group, you can have a sponsor or a life coach or a mentor or a counselor or like a buddy system, a friend, but you have to have that one person that they don't have to be your best friend. You just have to have accountability. You have to have someone that you can rely on who is also a sober person that you can call up at any time without shame or judgment and say, hey, I need you, and confidently know that they will be there for you. Number 12 for staying sober long term is a willingness to try new things and willingness to be uncomfortable at times. Sometimes it is so important and necessary to allow yourself to be uncomfortable. And you have to be willing to keep an open mind and try new things. And that is number 13. Number 13 is keep an open mind, because like I said before, you cannot think yourself sober with the same mind that got you messed up. So keep an open mind, be willing to try new things, and it's okay to be uncomfortable. I had a sponsor that has since moved on and I think relapsed, and God bless her. I'm grateful for every single person that walked along the path with me to get me to this point. I am not at a point of perfection at all. I still have hot mess days, but I can tell you my worst day sober is better than my best day high by far every single time. But that sponsor that I'm referring to told me you need to get uncomfortable. And I'm grateful that she told me to step outside of my comfort zone. And stepping outside of your comfort zone doesn't look like going to a new dealer's house. Stepping outside of your comfort zone, because you're comfortable with that, right? You're comfortable with showing up to crazy people's houses and doing crazy things because the crazy was what gave us that high. Number 14 is a constant contact with God. I am so grateful for this step. This is actually a step in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm closing my eyes because I am in tune. Like, I am so grateful that AA led me to my God, and my God is Jesus Christ. And building that prayer life for me was just like knowing what it meant and felt like to engage with the Spirit and listening to that still small voice and having constant prayer. And if I don't even know why it took me so long to think for number 14, but I'm going to take my little penny pen and I'm going to put prayer all the way up here, because, you know, it goes right up here with brutal honesty, because you can't only get honest and tattle on yourself. You've got to be honest with yourself, and you've got to be honest with God, because he already knows, right? But having a constant contact with God and waking up every morning, falling on your knees and praying, and then allowing him to lead you through the day is going to change your life. I fully believe that. I am living it. I am proof of that 150%. Prayer is the most important. Not only praying for yourself and talking to God, but praying with other people. It just goes back to community and communication and a willingness to try new things. I had no God concept when I got sober. I didn't grow up going to church. Number 15 is giving back to those who need recovery and listening to them without judging them. So you cannot keep what you have unless you give it away. I fully believe that. God doesn't save people just so that they can hoard it to themselves and continue to be selfish, self-centered pricks. He gives you this story so you can share it with others. I do that in my community, and I'm doing that here with you today. And I have a couple bonuses, because recovery is a lifelong process and it takes all kinds of hard work to stay sober. And just these 15 things aren't what has kept me sober long term. But number one would be my relationship with God. If I had to put anything of the utmost importance, would be my relationship with God. But I have two bonuses. Bonus number one is gratitude. You cannot stay sober long term with a nasty, ugly, ungrateful heart. You have got to be grateful. And there have been many, many times where I've had to list out every single thing that I am grateful for, because life still sucks. And getting sober doesn't solve everything, because life keeps happening. People are going to die. You are going to have accidents. You are going to make mistakes. You're going to have financial issues. Life's still going to happen, and you're going to have to know how to stay sober through it. So reframing my mindset with gratitude is crucially important. And number two, be willing to apologize, because you're still going to mess up and you're still going to make shitty decisions sometimes, and people are going to be mad at you. So you're going to have to be willing to say, hey, I messed up and I apologize. If you have watched through this video, I am so grateful. Please be sure to like, share, subscribe, whatever you want to do to engage with this video. I will be so grateful to you, but thank you. My name's Kelsey. If you are sober today, give yourself a round of applause because you are awesome. Love you. Have a good day.